Okay, today is September 18th. The time is 6:02. This is the Planning Advisory Board meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. Would like to read a roll call, please. Say present if you are here. Melanie Hartwick Davis,
Present.
Lawrence Blevins, Edward Evans,
Present.
Van Mason,
Present.
Dawn Stolfus,
Present.
and Elizabeth Rosberg,
Present.
and myself, Gus Kurtz, present. I would like a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? The agenda is approved. A motion to approve the minutes, please.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? The agenda is approved. I mean, the minutes.
August 14th.
Okay. For August 14th. Okay, briefing on draft region 1, 3, and 9 plans and the draft comprehensive zoning map will be presented by the Office of Planning and Zoning. We will start the presentation from the senior planners on the region plan teams, Mark Wildonger, Patrick Hughes, and Eric Ketterland. Then we'll have time for the PAB to ask questions and make comments. Once the PAB is done with comments, the record is now open for testimony on the PAB drafts of region 1, 3, and 9. And the zoning map.
Kevin, we can hold that till they're done there.
Yeah.
Okay. Your question.
Members of the public at that time can provide their comments orally or in written format. And written testimony will be accepted up until 11:59 on the dates, which I will explain later on. Okay. Mark, you're first. The floor is yours.
So I'll provide an overview of the entire region planning process with a little context with that Plan 2040 as the background. And then each of us will go into our regions 1, 3, and 9 plans as well as comprehensive zoning. So again, we're happy to be here. This is our second go at this, second round. Got one more round to go next year, right? You're all looking forward to it. Do want to recognize that this is a team effort. We've got our senior planners here that have been managing the individual region plans. But Mike, Jesse, Cindy Carrier, Mark Burt here, Christina Pompa, as I think most of you all know, have all been helping us, as well as a lot of folks, people's names that you don't know, that have really been working behind the scenes and producing a lot of the documents that you see, the polished documents that you see, as well as a lot of the web tools that we've been using throughout this process. So a big shout out to those folks. This is just suspense that I'm creating. All right, Jesse, what am I doing wrong? Give that a shot.
Is there like a setting for dancing? When it turn off?
You read the.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Oh, at the end, that's what you said. LOL.
Let's go back to the here. Okay, so again, it is providing you an overview. Again, want to provide you some region plan information. That's common to all 3 region plans so that we can knock that out. You don't have to hear it 3 times like I think you all did last year. Talk about how the plans relate to Plan 2040, the outreach and input during the process, the general structure of these plans, and the relationship between plan, land use, and zoning. I know you all might be familiar with some of these planning and zoning terms that we've been using for the past few years, like development policy area, plan, land use, zoning, but we do want to provide a primer to then the public who's listening in as well so that they can help make some informed decisions. Then, like I said, we'll move through the specific details of each plan, starting with regions 1, 3, and 9. And then lastly, Mark Burke from our GIS and research section, he'll provide just a very brief tutorial on how to use that online zoning map. And again, we'll provide some websites where you can find those online zoning maps a little bit later. And then we'll prefer to take questions at the end, but of course, if something comes up, feel free to ask. Okay, so Plan 2040, really these region plans were born kind of 3 years ago out of Plan 2040, which was our county's general development plan, our county master plan. It was adopted by County Council in 2021, and OPZ, the Office of Planning and Zoning, worked with other county and state agencies to develop Plan 2040 with the assistance of a 23-member Citizens Advisory Committee. And I'll talk about also how during these region plans, we've had stakeholder advisory committees made up of individuals from the community. So the plan itself looks out over the Plan 2040 looks out over a 20-year time horizon, and it sets a vision for where we want to be as a community and outlines the strategies that will move us in that direction. And again, it's centered on land use. As you can imagine, a lot of issues are sort of related to land use, like transportation, housing, and community amenities. So Plan 2040, it sets the policy framework to protect the natural environment, shape development of the built environment, provide public services to promote healthy communities, and support a diverse, resilient economy. It was developed through dozens of public forums and is informed by thousands of comments from the community. There are many common concerns throughout the county, including traffic congestion, school capacity, environmental protection, and housing affordability. Plan 2040 includes goals, policies, and strategies to address these issues and manage development and redevelopment. We do want to sort of toot our own horn a little bit here. Is Plan 2040 did win the 2021 Maryland Sustainable Growth Award for Sustainable Communities category. Okay. All right, so Plan 2040, like I said, then set up this process for smaller regional plans to be carried out to look at ways to implement the goals and policies of Plan 2040 at the community level. So 9 regions were established. We've got those outlines up on that map. And like I said, is where we currently are is we're discussing regions 1, which is the northern area, 3, which is sort of the Severn, Glen Burnie central area, and region 9, which is the coastal southern area. So again, region plans are to follow Plan 2040, but are intended to drill down and make recommendations about how to implement those goals here at this regional level. Again, it provides recommendations on where development should and shouldn't occur and what it should look like, what areas are underutilized, what areas need redevelopment, what areas are environmentally sensitive that need protection. So like Plan 2040, the region plans are policy guides and are not regulatory. The region plans are implemented with a range of tools, including the zoning maps and zoning and development codes, capital improvement program, or program policy and study initiatives. I do want to note again that while we're talking about these region plans, comprehensive zoning is a part of this region plan process. Plan 2040 established a stakeholder advisory committee between 9 and 15 members would work to collaborate with and advise staff in the development of the plan and its recommendations. Each committee is to be composed of a diverse range of viewpoints and demographics in the region, like long-term residents, members of social organizations, local business representatives, real estate developers, members of government agencies. We have a variety of sort of backgrounds that we were looking for to be seated on this stakeholder advisory committee. So members of each stakeholder advisory committee were either nominated by the county executive or a county council member and appointed by, and the appointment of each SAC was approved by a resolution adopted by the county council. So again, there are our beautiful 15-member SAC members from each region, region 1, 3, and 9. So their work started at that kickoff meeting in October 2023, and they met approximately 9 or 10 times between then and this past August. Despite some members resigning due to other obligations during the process, quorum was met and verified at each meeting. So again, is on behalf of OPZ, I'd like to extend a special thank you to those SAC members for their tireless work on these plans. Their intimate knowledge of the geographic areas and the time they devoted was significant and really must be commended. So going through then the public process and outreach. When we get to the council draft, we'll have a full description of public process, the community events we attended, the questionnaires that we had, the online feedback maps that we had available, surveys of draft strategies that we were rolling out periodically throughout the process, and a description then of some drop-in sessions that we had for those for the review of those draft strategies, as well as the draft zoning map. Do want to also highlight that at the beginning of this process, the very first thing that we did was send out a postcard to all the property owners. That was about 67,000 properties that whose addresses then received a postcard. Just sort of indicating this process is happening. This is where you can go to get more information. We've had a robust website throughout this process so that people could get more informed on what we're doing here and learn how to become engaged in the process. And then, like I said, we held a series of questionnaires. We met with stakeholder groups, so maybe some individuals that weren't chosen to be seated on that 15-member stakeholder advisory committee. We did recognize that there may have been some other prominent organizations within that community, so we reached out to them and sort of just picked their brain about what they thought was most important or what needed fixing within the region. I've got a lot of stats here, and I don't want to go through all of them because I know we're tight on time. But I can provide those in a follow-up, and like I said, is our plan does have a description of the outreach that we did. Something else that we did that I think was pretty interesting was the Region 9 folks, and I don't want to steal your thunder here, but you all had worked with the South River High School signature program. So trying to work with the local students then to sort of better understand what they thought were important issues as the next up and coming generation that'll be living and playing and working in the county. So if Eric wants to follow up on that, maybe address that in your presentation. So again, is all that input that we had received throughout these questionnaires, whether it's in person, online, all that helps then inform recommendation in the region plan and every then sort of iteration after that, because after each deliverable or each document that we had then pushed out up on the website or in person, we would gather that information, sort of digest it, what sort of nuggets of information here will then prompt a certain change or a tweak to the plan or any of the recommendations that we have made. Okay, so here's then the structure. So that's a lot of background on the whole process. We're going to move into then the plan itself, the thicker document that you all have in front of you and what you can find online. And then we'll ultimately move into the second part of this whole region plan process, which is the comprehensive zoning, which is a zoning map that you can also find online as well from accompanying tables. So each region plan structure is similar to that of Plan 2040. We have a vision statement. That's the starting point for any community's comprehensive plan and provides a common direction for long-term planning. It's informed by the community and tailored for each region. Then we have some background information. It includes detailed descriptions of each community within the region. And then 4 chapters dealing with the key elements of the region plan. So natural environment, that includes our sensitive areas, water quality, forest, land conservation, water and sewer. We have the built environment, that's housing, planned land use, climate change, sea level rise, parks, health. Then in healthy communities, we have our parks and health, aging and disabilities, making sure that we take care of our seniors, public schools and other facilities. And then the last chapter is the healthy economy, where we're looking at how to sort of incentivize redevelopment in those key areas that the communities has helped identify, as well as any then other type of programs or assistance that folks may have thought of that could help with local businesses. We also have an implementation section, which I'll provide some more detail in the next slide, and appendices, which if you've been through regions 2, 4, and 7, you do see those tables in the back that identify the changes to plan land use and development policy areas. Those tables are for now just up on the website, but you'll see those in the county council draft. So the last section is on the implementation of the plan's recommendations. This is an example from the Region 9 plan, just to illustrate that. I know you're all not meant to necessarily read each word here, but we have a column here of those strategies that are looking to address those issues that we've heard about from the community, like traffic, where's traffic the worst, what sidewalks need fixing, how do we get people through that region, very specific ideas, again, very tailored to that region. We just have references here to where it may be found in Plan 2040, how we plan on implementing it, whether it's a capital project and funding needs to be allocated to it, whether it's a partnership with a local jurisdiction. We sort of identify how we plan on implementing it. Then we have those implementing parties, whether it's office planning and zoning, recreation and parks, whether it's building a new park, for example. When we see those projects actually being implemented, whether it's a short-term solution, midterm, or long-term, and then just how we plan on measuring success for that strategy, just so that we're being accountable. And then here is one of those tables that you would find at the back of the document. Like I said, it's currently online. This is one of our change tables where, again, on the left-hand side, you would find the community, the council district, the change code, different, characteristics or identifiers for that property, the tax map, the size, and then the different designations that are currently being recommended for that site. And most importantly, then a justification as well. So again, for the benefit of everybody here, again, talking about the different designations that we're going to be walking through this evening. I do want to specify that Plan 20 or the region plans like Plan 2040 are regulatory documents, but comprehensive zoning is regulatory, and it, like I said, it is part of this process. Comprehensive zoning makes recommendations to align with the region zoning. With the planned land use map as required by code. The region plan also has, the region plan also recommends some updates to the planned land use maps as adopted with Plan 2040. A key part of growth management is the development policy area map and the planned land use map. This shows how they relate to each other. Those designations relate to each other. So development policy areas broadly identify where development and redevelopment are encouraged, and the preservation of a particular character or natural features are prioritized. Very big picture. Then we move a step more specific to planned land use. That further guides development patterns based on the vision for the region. Development policy areas and planned land use, again, set a policy framework that is implemented through zoning, which again, I just want to stress is regulatory. Zoning is then used to help implement the policies outlined with the development policy area map and the planned land use map. Zoning provides regulatory details such as type and intensity of uses and whether they are permitted or not permitted in certain areas. Table 17 in volume 2 of Plan 2040 outlines the relationship between planned land use and zoning. And I have a screenshot here and a couple slides that sort of shows you that crosswalk of sort of consistency and what we anticipate the uses being in each one of these designations or zones. And again, so up on this screen is we do have just the general definitions for those categories, and to help you sort of better understand the sort of on the ground context, each one of the regions has provided an example and location then of the designations that you would find. So the process to get to changing the zoning or the planned land use is sort of this iterative process. It's a forward, backwards, diagonal type of process where we're taking our adopted planned land use from Plan 2040 or the development policy area, and that then helps inform what the zoning should be. Because again, as we want it to be consistent, as if I were to just sort of go back here and use that example for R1 with Northrop Grumman, if it's an industrial planned land use, you're typically then going to find a W, which is one of our industrial zones, an industrial zoning district with it, W1, 2, or 3, for example. But on the flip side is maybe we didn't get everything right in Plan 2040, and we're identifying areas that may have changed since then, or that we didn't have that sort of intimate view of the community or better understanding of what each parcel is being used. So that's where we then sort of have to work backwards, where staff is then working with the community, identifying some of these areas that maybe we need to change the planned land use, and then that would help inform the zoning for that site. So again, as you're going to see changes to not only the zoning, but the planned land use, and in certain situations, development policy areas and their overlays. So walking through a couple types of changes, again, what I just described was very broad, right? Is we're proposing to you certain changes, but we've actually classified some of these changes. One is that consistency change, where for properties, again, where there's that change in the planned land use, and then looking actually on the existing zoning map, that zoning doesn't actually match the planned land use as identified in Plan 2040. So you're going to see then that area in this process, the zoning be updated to match then the planned land use. Oops, I'm sorry, that helps a little bit better. So again, Plan 2040's planned land use identified this as, let's say, a medium density residential, low density residential, for example, but really you had this outlier, and we need to change then this area, the zoning for this area, to be consistent with this first illustration up at the top. Okay. And then down here at the bottom, sorry, I'm going to shift that again, is that crosswalk where you're seeing then what the planned land use designation is, what the zoning categories would be that are consistent with planned land use, and then the anticipated uses within that planned land use and zoning designation. Okay. The other issue that came up, this type of change is really just aligning the zoning to the parcel boundaries. This example is taken from the Village at Lee Air Park in Region 9. A piece of legislation came up sort of between when Plan 2040 was adopted and these region plans that then allows the Office of Planning and Zoning to correct minor misalignments. As you can imagine, over time in a digital map, you've sort of got maybe some shift happening where now the zoning line doesn't quite align with the parcel boundary. So what we're just trying to do is make sure that those lines are snapping, the zoning line is snapping to the parcel line to correct any of those misalignments. And again, we did want to make sure that we understood that that this was all, that was the intent. And if there were any issues with split zoning, that we better understand why a parcel may have been split zoned and provide some context to that. So this one now is a change to the open space zoning district. And this is to align with the public parks, natural areas, and areas covered by conservation easements in perpetuity. The OS districts, the current OS district was initially created with the 1970s comprehensive zoning of the original 1952 zoning map. The OS zone appears to be generally based in part on older FEMA 100-year floodplain boundaries, but in our research, there is no documentation for much of the OS boundary and the justification is unclear. The FEMA floodplain maps have been updated over time and now deviate from the OS zoning district. County code and state and federal law regulations have been adopted that include more stringent protection of floodplains, streams, wetlands as properties developed. These other regulations are more effective and appropriate tools than the zoning map for managing risks of development in floodplains and conserving the natural functions of streams and floodplains. So the county is proposing to remap the OS zoning district so that it is consistent with the adopted plan land use map categories of conservation, which includes platted floodplains, which you can see in this existing zoning that it's just sort of flows in and out of people's backyards. Again, it's not snapped to the parcel boundaries. So what you see then in this proposed zoning is how the OS zone has now been sort of cleaned up in a sense and is consistent then with this definition that it adheres to that planned land use designation of conservation. So again, it includes those platted floodplains, easements, other preservation areas where primary function is conservation in perpetuity, as well as the parks and open space designation, which includes public parks and privately owned areas that provide active and passive recreational amenities. Okay, planned unit development. Throughout the county, you may see these larger scale type of developments where, in this case of Cedar Hill in Region 1, this was a master plan community where a lot of the zoning just doesn't make sense. It's cutting through people's property. There's no rhyme or reason necessarily to it. Office planning and zoning, we're recommending that zoning not be changed to snap to the parcel lines, just because of then the various agreements and how it was platted then when it was ultimately developed. We don't want to mess with those with that language at that time. So these are mapped up on the county website so that you can sort of better understand the relationship to why a certain area may be zoned a certain way where it may look a little wonky like this. You would just have to refer back to the plan or the planned unit development file. The last two changes that we had made was, like I said, is staff did various site tours around the community. We may have identified areas where, oh, this might be a good place for some redevelopment, or actually this place, you know, based on the road capacity, might not be able to support much more development. So we may have made those various recommendations based on actually being on the ground and seeing the community and also hearing from the community. And then the last type of change, there were various opportunities for property owners to submit applications to request the zoning to their property. That happened roughly this time last year. And then property owners also had a chance when the preliminary draft zoning map went out a few months ago. And staff had taken those requests under consideration, and those have been reviewed with the stakeholder advisory committee. Okay, that is the grand overview of sort of everything that's shared really amongst the three region plans, our process, and public input. Where we'll go next is the Region 1 plan, as well as comprehensive zoning for Region 1. So take a breath. Any questions so far? I need a breath. Okay.
Chairman, I have a question. Could Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, Elizabeth.
Okay. Mark, thank you. Great job. I did have a question about the changes, what we referred to before as consistency changes. It sounds like it has been revamped based on the last round of region plans. So you have divided them up more into boundary line adjustments versus zoning adjustments versus open space adjustments. Is that correct?
We're considering those as consistency changes, right? So ensuring that zoning is consistent with planned land use, that zoning is matching to the parcel boundaries unless otherwise stated, consistency within the open space zoning district with the criteria that we set forth in Plan 2040, likewise with planned unit development. It's this last slide that we're considering sort of staff recommended or stakeholder advisory committee recommended, and you all, as part of the change chart, zoning table, you'll also then have a column where you can have your PAB recommended zoning changes as well, and property owner change application. So this slide here is sort of that division between consistency changes and staff recommended change. And staff meaning staff, stakeholder advisory committee, or PAB. Did I answer your question?
I think so. It seemed like, okay, no, you're good. It just seemed like we were so overwhelmed in the first round with, I don't know, oh my gosh, over 1,000 quote unquote consistency changes. And it seemed like you all, for this round, were able to break them down into different buckets more than just having it named as consistency changes, whether it be boundary line adjustments, whether it be open space adjustments, and one thing or another. So I just wanted to clarify that.
So the consistency change table that, Jesse, do they have those, or they're online? Yeah, okay. So the ones that are online, how many pages are they? Region 3 is 200.
Yes, region 3 is
Okay.
200, regions 1 and 9 are both about 100 pages.
Yeah, so in that consistency change table is where you're gonna see slides from, well, because these planned unit developments aren't actually changed. So everything from this slide, slide, and that slide are gonna be captured in those consistency change tables, those massive 200-page documents.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas this slide right here, these two changes, is this thinner change table, which I think is what, like 8 pages or so.
And the table Mark is referring to is the comprehensive zoning change table. So if you were to be on, say, the region 3 wet hub site, you would see changes from this slide on that comprehensive zoning change table. The slides that Mark just went over, those other 3 slides, are the consistency change table.
And if I can add, this is Mike Springer. What Mark has described for our approach to consistency changes is the same as what we took in round 1. You might see a difference in the number, in large part that's because region 4 was so large. So if you see smaller numbers, it makes me a question of geography, but we continue to apply the principles of Plan 2040 and the plan land use map there to the zoning in the same way.
And Mark, you want to chime in about that, Bill?
Mark Burke from Planning Research. Yeah. So the reason we're seeing a decrease in the number of these consistency changes is we started implementing Bill 2223. And Bill 2223 gave us the authority to correct those minor misalignments. We have certain criteria we look at and evaluate, and a lot of the consistency changes that you saw in regions 2, 4, and 7 were those minor misalignments. At that point in time, we didn't have the authority to make those minor adjustments, because Bill 2223 was still in process. So now we have Bill 2223, we have the authority to make these minor changes. We've run the alignment on that, it's really drastically decreased the number of consistency changes we had. You'll also see in regions 5, 6, and 8 coming up also, hopefully the same results.
That's helpful. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All set to move on?
Mhm.
Great. Okay, so like I said, we had a robust public process. Just want to share very briefly what we had heard from the community. Development pressure. I don't think that's very unique to Region 1 necessarily. I think we've all heard that throughout all 6 of these regions so far, as well as Plan 2040. That it's had an adverse impact on the environment, such as increased flooding events, inadequate stormwater management, lack of habitat and wildlife protection, and a lack of protection of forested areas. There's a lack of affordable and diverse housing options and gaps in the transportation network. Region 1 is largely built out and generally not affordable. Code restrictions limit the potential to develop diverse housing types to help with affordability. Traffic congestion is a primary issue to the region, as much of the workforce travels from outside of the area to reach job centers. And again, there being gaps in the transit and bicycle and pedestrian network. Individuals mentioned that there's a need for additional park or recreational facilities, that there's limited access to parks and green space, and limited recreational programs for uses of all ages. There's also a lack of quality and essential commercial options, especially grocery stores and healthy food options in some of these areas. So residents desire new and high quality retail options, again, such as grocers, childcare facilities. This is a nationwide issue as well as supporting small businesses. Here is the vision statement for Region 1. Like I said, is an important part of the plan, is really developing this vision of what the community aspires to become in the next 10, 20 years. The SAC developed this vision statement based on a lot of public feedback throughout, again, the various public processes that we had, public outreach processes. So major themes of this vision statement, recognizing the diversity of individuals and communities within Region 1, and ensuring development is sustainable and creates a healthy society that people can live, work, learn, travel, play in, and that there's a clean environment and a robust economy to support individuals throughout that area. So very briefly, some of the highlights here from the individual chapters. From the natural environment, we have 15 strategies. And again, unlike with the previous round of region plans, we're really trying to focus in on strategies for the specific region and not strategies that may be addressed during Plan 2040 or might be somewhat similar. Okay, so again, the highlights, drilling a little bit deeper here for the natural environment, is how to address stormwater management and pollution runoff in Region 1, tree plantings, making sure that there's that tree canopy, and especially in Region 1, there are a few individual sites that we can actually cover here when we talk about zoning, about how they need to be remediated then for future development, whether it stays as an industrial use. With the built environment, we have 50 strategies. Again, some highlights being developing more senior housing, addressing traffic patterns. We heard a lot about how when the schools let out at certain times, sometimes it's one way in and one way out of the school, which then really creates a burden on that one road that's being used for the ingress and egress. Truck traffic obviously being a big issue in Region 1 because you have a lot of warehousing, it's by the airport, and a lot of these trucks now with your Google Maps and Waze are being able to be routed, especially now with, unfortunately, the Key Bridge, being routed through local neighborhoods that can't support 18-wheelers or any other type of truck traffic. Not to mention the safety issues with that as well. Developing a Ritchie Highway vision plan, making sure that's a major corridor in the Brooklyn Park area, and how to get people moving quickly, not only in their vehicles, but safely if they're biking or as pedestrians, because there's a lot of potential there on Ritchie Highway. And developing more transit routes within Ritchie. So like we did with the first round of region plans, there may have been situations where the current mixed-use zoning districts weren't quite aligned with what the community envisioned as a potential change on a certain property. And so in some cases, they just identified or designated an area's planned land use as mixed use and said, when there is zoning reform, which actually is happening, a bill was introduced on Monday that will try to address some of these newer zoning districts. But when there is that reform, they would like to provide this narrative of how they envision an area being mixed use or the intensity of that area. So we've got a section in that plan where we identified probably half a dozen or so locations within Region 1 where either the mixed use zoning has been recommended at this time, or again, the planned land use is designated as mixed use, so that sometime in the future, mixed use zoning could be applied. And the SAC just really identified what type of intensity, what type of uses they may want to see, how many stories, what type of other improvements may be necessary to help support that type of mixed use in that area. Within the healthy communities section, we have 17 strategies. This is where we again talk about recreational parks as well as community facilities. There are a couple capital projects underway in the Brooklyn Park area in Region 1 that are exciting. But we still heard that there's still this desire for more recreation parks, more green space within the area, more really at these light rail stations, an effort to make them safe. And then lastly, with the healthy economy, again, a lot of the strategies within the healthy economy or things that the SAC had talked about really do apply countywide, but again, a couple highlights here within Region 1, knowing that there are a couple maybe industrial properties that could be redeveloped. And if there's an opportunity to attract science and technology-based employers to those sites, if and when they do get redeveloped, as well as again, certain corridors within Region 1, again, Ritchie Highway or Fort Small Road, if there are opportunities to provide financial incentives or other types of incentives to sort of rehabilitate or refurbish those areas. Okay, then, so that's the sort of highlight of the bulk of the region plan. Now sort of getting our way into comprehensive zoning, introduce you all to holding capacity. And the holding capacity analysis is also factored right into the draft zoning map. What we do is identify areas where there's underutilized properties or vacant properties and what the zoning is on those properties and sort of what can be developed on those properties and under the current zoning. Matching that up against then the household forecast and whether we have enough land that's zoned appropriately for development or residential development that can accommodate then those future households. So if you're operating at a deficit, that may mean that you have people maybe wanting to drive into Anne Arundel County for the jobs. They're using the roads, but they're having to live elsewhere. And so there's that balance that we're always trying to strike within these plans of, we hear people say, you know, they don't want a lot of development, but then it also means that people are having to drive to their work or restaurants or wherever they're looking to go. So what I want to highlight here is for Region 1 specifically, we are at a deficit with the existing zoning in the region to accommodate the region's projected growth over the planning horizon. However, the latest zoning recommendations that we'll present to you here shortly include mixed use areas around the BWI MARC station as well as the Cromwell light rail station that we're hoping can make a dent into that deficit with higher, density residential density being built in those areas. And again, with those areas then being in close proximity to transit, hoping that then takes vehicles off the road and sort of alleviates or addresses that issue of traffic congestion. Again, here's a table of the adopted zoning acreages as well as the proposed, as well as then the change. And again, all this being just recommended at this point. Our R districts, so the RLD, R1 through 22 that you see there are residential districts. C indicates commercial districts. W is our industrial zones. MXD are our mixed use zones. SB is small business. OS is open space. And the MA2 is a maritime district that you'll find out near Fort Smallwood in Region 1. If I were to highlight just a couple changes here, R5 decreased due to the Bell Grove site where there's a recommendation for R2 as well as R5 and R10, as well as the Stony Beach area where that was just a consistency change, sort of right sizing the zoning to match what's actually built on the ground. And I think for most of these statistics here, you'll see is it's really a matter of that of sort of right sizing some of these areas or implementing those consistency changes. And I can come back to this if you do want to dig deeper and touch on any specific changes. Okay, so getting into then the recommended zoning map, we're going to start with the Hanover area, which is right by the airport, and sort of work our way clockwise around up through the Linthicum, Ferndale, Brooklyn Park, and Curtis Bay area. So in Hanover, we received 15 applications, which I'm just going to hit on the highlights here in the next few slides. And I'll mention that too, is we're not going to go through every change property here tonight, unless you want to. Everybody, no sleeping bags, right? So we're just going to hit on the highlights that received a lot of public comments, or where there may have been a difference in position between the Stakeholder Advisory Committee and the Office of Planning and Zoning. So walking through a couple here, I'm going to try to speed this up here, is in the Queenstown Road area. This is just south of the airport. The area circled in green is currently zone W1, but we had heard, actually it's adjacent to Region 3 to the south. And what we've been hearing is that these are single family homes, and individuals aren't looking to necessarily sell their home in the future. And they're afraid that with it being zone W1, that there could be a more intense use built next to them if it stays W1. So we're recommending this area become R2. So again, for folks, R2 being 2 units per acre. When we talked to the community, people were generally supportive of zoning this residential to ensure that their neighbor's property essentially will stay residential. Then in the BWI industrial area, we're sort of, like I said, we're sort of working our way in a clockwise manner here, where we're to the west side of BWI Airport. It's mostly industrial. You're going to see a lot of W1. That's your lowest intensity industrial district. A couple properties came in with recommendations, or sorry, requests for W2. Again, any W zoning district would be consistent with an industrial plan land use. So both the SAC and Office of Planning and Zoning were comfortable with upzoning those properties to W2. This is one of those areas we're talking. This is the BWI MARC station and Amtrak station, which is here on the east side of this green area, the conservation area or stream area. there's been an effort to identify the west side at least becoming potentially mixed use. There is a trail that connects across this green area and puts you right at the train station. And so if there's an opportunity to redevelop these properties into something of a higher intensity use so that people can, again, use the train station to get to Baltimore, Washington, DC, or points beyond, and maybe take cars off the road. So again, while you don't necessarily see a change here in the listing here of the zoning districts, note that what we're doing is just kind of, this is the current mixed use zoned area. And what we're recommending is expanding that out towards the train station area. So you have that connectivity.
Mark, question before you leave that, is there a number on our chart to follow that?
That area, that's a good question. Let me get back to you, and maybe we can put that in the chat when Patrick and Eric go. Is that okay?
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay, sure. Okay, next up is the Harmons community. This is just a small little community. I'm gonna go back here so that you can see it in a little bit more context. It's a historical community just tucked in here between the two lobes of Hanover, just south of the PWI airport. And while we may have initially recommended a mixed-use zoning district for some of these industrial properties, this was an area that during our outreach with the community, they said, look, we don't plan on selling anytime soon. We do wish to stay as an industrial zoning district. So we recognize that, and that's what we're recommending. So essentially no change for this area, but just wanted to bring that to your attention that this had been a hotspot during the preliminary draft, but we've reverted back to the adopted zoning, which is what the property owners are interested in.
Is that along Dorsey Road?
Exactly. Yeah, right here in the middle.
Right,
Stone store, pet stay.
right, yeah, okay.
Moving north to the Linthicum Heights area, I'm going to touch on 4 properties here, or 4 areas. One is the Andover Road area. This is an area just north of the airport, between the BWI Business District and the sort of well-established gridded network of sort of low to medium density homes here to the east. And bringing this to your attention, it was a similar situation to the Harmons example, where there was an initial recommendation to upzone this area to R2 and R5, but we did hear from the community during the preliminary draft phase, and we've since then rolled that back to the adopted zoning of R1. So no change, but just again, wanted to bring it to your attention since that did receive a lot of comments during the preliminary draft review. The SAC did recommend just one property here on the corner. The Elizabeth, the code for that is right here, but that is just for this one property. They did recommend that go to R5. So just one slight difference with this area.
What is that property now?
It's currently R1.
Okay.
But it is adjacent to a BWI mixed use district overlay,
Mhm.
which does allow a higher density of residential. In fact, the properties across the street here, this sort of rectangle, they are currently being developed into townhomes and multi-family.
Okay,
So this property would be right across the street.
Okay, but, sorry, question.
Yep.
Sorry, is that not then split zoned?
No, it's a different property owner. So what we're saying.
Okay, but that's all one number.
It's just this one property is LHS 0009.
Right?
And that's one property owner. And the SAC is recommending R5 for just this one property. These other properties are owned by various other individuals.
Okay, but according to this chart on page 10 of 11, for that number, OPZ is recommending R1.
That's right. So OPZ is recommending R1, the SAC, sorry, I can't highlight that, is R5 for this one property. So 0009 is 6605 Maryland Avenue. And OPZ is recommending R1 for that property. The SAC is recommending R5.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Another property that received a lot of attention during the preliminary draft was this LHS 0010. The adopted zoning is R5, but during Plan 2040, the planned land use was changed to industrial. And so a consistent zoning recommended, or a recommended zoning district for that property would be W1. An individual, the property owner also did submit an application for this property requesting W1. Again, seeing that W1 is consistent with the industrial plan land use, we agree that W1 makes the most sense for the property. However, the Linthicum community did have concerns with this being developed, possibly into a parking lot, because it is currently wooded. There's a cell phone tower, I believe, here in the back corner. And individuals in the community thought that that if it were to be developed into, say, a parking lot, that the trees would be cut down and they would lose this sort of noise and sort of view-shed scenic buffer. But again, if it is currently zoned R5, an individual, I think it's about 3 acres, I think. So they would be able to say build at least five units per acre on this property. So, but I think this one is actually 1 acre. So the previous property was 3 acres. So
It says 1.54.
1.5, sorry, yeah, so they would maybe be able to build 5 homes on that at our, under the current zone. The next area here in the Linthicum community is by the light rail station. I want to emphasize that no zoning change, no significant zoning change is being recommended for this area. Just minor sort of parcel or zoning district alignments with parcel boundary are being proposed in this area. However, the planned land use is being recommended to be changed from commercial to mixed use. And again, this goes back to what I had mentioned earlier, where the stakeholder advisory committee didn't feel like there was a mixed use zoning district that really reflected what their vision is for this area. And so they're essentially saying, when there is mixed use district zoning reform, that maybe one of those districts be applied at this area, because at that time, then if a mixed use zoning district is appropriate, it would be then consistent with the mixed use plan land use. Okay. Nothing else is the development policy area overlay and recommended policy area overlay. They're not changing. Like I said, the zoning isn't significantly changing, but I did want to bring this to your attention because this also got a lot of attention during the draft map review, despite it not being a zoning change. The community did not want to see any type of intensification on this in this area. This is by the light rail station, where individuals are reporting that there is crime in the area, there are blighted buildings, and they don't see mixed use as sort of improving that area or any potential mixed use development in that area. Okay. But again, no zoning change, just sort of this vision that when there is mixed use reform, that maybe one of those districts be implemented at that time.
Mark,
The last one-
sorry, to go back, can you define that? Because you're saying that it's gonna stay C1 and small business, which is different than mixed use. So does that also have an application number to change it?
So this would be on your planned land use change chart.
Okay,
And If you don't mind, let me try to get through the slides and I can put
Okay,
that in the
that's
chat.
fine.
Does it
Yep,
work for
yep.
everybody? Maybe I can pass it, since you all are not on the chat, maybe I can just pass something along the table, front table here. Okay,
Thank you.
okay. The last one here in the Lincoln Heights area is, in the northern section along Nursery Road, where a property owner submitted an application for this property, requesting to go to W2, where the adopted zoning is currently C3. Office Planning and Zoning, we're recommending that that zoning stay as adopted. The Stakeholder Advisory Committee is recommending W2, as well as the two adjacent parcels here along 695. And you can see that there, the rest of this purple area is industrial, an industrial zoning district as well. Okay. But again, we didn't get a lot of comment, or we didn't get any comment really on this area, but just wanted to bring it to your attention because this is one of those areas where Office of Planning and Zoning and the Stakeholder Advisory Committee have different positions. Okay, moving on to the Ferndale area. I just want to touch on two areas here, the Cromwell light rail station and the Ferndale light rail station. So in Cromwell, we had this mix of sort of industrial zoning districts, commercial zoning districts. And the vision here, if you've been to this area, there's the Cromwell Shopping Center. That could really use a big facelift, and maybe it's not being used to the highest and best use. And so the idea here is implementing a mixed use transit zoning district to help them sort of encourage or create that incentive to redevelop this site into something better, especially because it is right across, well, some of these properties are right there next to the Cromwell light rail station. And we use roughly a half-mile radius for that as well, recognizing that's what most people are comfortable with. Moving on to the Ferndale light rail station, same idea as the Linthicum light rail station, where not recommending any changes to the zoning, but where we're recommending a change to the planned land use to mixed use, so that again, in the future, when there is mixed use zoning district code reform, that one of those districts that's more appropriate based on the narrative that you find in the region plan document can be applied here. Okay. All right, a couple more properties here. In the Brooklyn Park neighborhood, or community rather, the Belgrove site is sort of that gorilla in the room here that we're going to try to tackle, as well as property along Ritchie Highway. And so the Belgrove site, the property owners came in for a request. That request reflects what the Office of Planning and Zoning's recommendation is, where you have this mix of W2, R5, and R10. And the SAC, when looking at this property, looking at this large property that has a lot of potential to be redeveloped, said, let's just look at it as one big mixed use zoning district, C being commercial, and just let then the variety of current use ratios within the code sort of dictate what can be built on that site throughout the entire site, rather than sort of blocking it off into 3 different areas, W2 being here, R5 being up here, and R10 over here. They sort of saw this whole property potentially being redeveloped, where you might have residential over here with a mixed commercial and a variety of uses, maybe being vertically integrated in that site. Yeah.
What was the 2040 plan used previously?
The Plan 2040 plan land use, I would have to look that up for that site. Yeah.
You have to what?
Look that up.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Okay, Patrick will get back to me in a second. Okay, so again, another situation where the Office of Planning and Zoning was agreeing with what the property owner was requesting. The SAC, again, just looking at that entire site and saying MXDC for that entire site.
Real quick on that one.
Yeah.
Let's say the property owner got denied in court and stuff like that. To do that, would you still allow him to do that?
That's what we're here talking about is the zoning. So what they're, I guess, contesting is some of those zoning district lines. Is that right? So this would, again, going back to the basics of zoning, allow them to do what's allowable in the code for that specific zoning district, build based on uses, bulk regulations, how high you can build, various setbacks. That would now be dictated by whatever zoning is adopted by county council, and your recommendation helps inform it.
Okay, because I believe the previous was R5. Check it, Patrick.
So, yeah, low to medium density residential
And now
is the
you're
plan
gonna,
land use.
and they want to cram in industrial right on top of that neighborhood.
So, yeah, just for folks, it's sort of roughly this area,
So you have a neighborhood to the north and to the south of it.
right?
And that neighborhood is directly cut off from everything residential other than the neighborhood itself. So therefore, I don't see a good idea to slap an industrial site right on top of that neighborhood, especially since it would be the bottom of the hill in that topographical area. The one road is 160, the bottom of that neighborhood is 2. And there's about a 1,500-foot difference, puts it at about a 30-degree slope. And things we can discuss.
There's a lot to discuss for this, absolutely, right? Yeah. Yeah, so we can dig into that later.
Yeah, no,
That's good.
for
Yeah.
that.
Okay, the last site here in Brooklyn Park that we'd like to discuss is along Ritchie Highway, commonly referred to as Blackjack Trucking. And based on new information, the Office of Planning and Zoning, I do want to sort of state that our recommendation has changed since our last Stakeholder Advisory Committee meeting based on new information. So the Office of Planning and Zoning is now recommending C4 for this piece. The SAC is recommending C3, which is what the 2 other properties to the north and south are currently zoned.
And Mark, what new information did you get to change your opinions to be C4?
Is better understanding the legal and historical or historical aspects of this property. And again, if the PAV is interested, we can provide you much of that information so you can understand sort of the twists and turns and arguments that have been made throughout those cases or throughout the case.
I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Agreed.
Would you like me to go in on that now?
We'll have
Yeah.
our upcoming meetings, we'll have the opportunity to receive public comment on these, and then you'll have your deliberation meeting where we'll have hours of time focused just on Region 1 and these at the more appropriate time for that in-depth discussion.
Gotcha.
Okay, lastly, the Curtis Bay community, as maybe you all know, and like you can see there up on the map, a lot of purple means it's a lot of industrial uses in that area. Not a lot of recommended changes, but there are sort of 2 properties that we want to call your attention to. One being the Army Depot, mostly vacant. I think they may have some operations here up along Ordnance Road, but for the most part vacant, and this could be a good opportunity for a redevelopment site. OPZ, we're recommending it just stay W2, but the SAC is recommending that the site may be ready now or there was a mixed-use zoning district that they felt reflected their vision for redevelopment on the site, and so that's why they're recommending NXDE.
is that 700 to 710 Ordinance Road? Or what number are we looking at?
I would have to verify that.
I believe the change, Jessica Levy here. I believe the change number for the Army Depot site is CZR1 CSP 0301.
Okay, that's what I got.
Ordinance Road.
That's 483 acres.
Yeah, yeah,
And that is waterfront.
that's right.
And then, is that the Brandon Shores?
Then the next one is the Brandon Shore site, if you're ready for it.
Right,
Okay, so same idea here is another opportunity, if you read in the news that this site could be decommissioned in the next 3 years, question mark. And so office planning and zoning, just to ensure that it's a legal conforming use, we're recommending W3. But the SAC, again, recognizing that they're content with a current zoning district that matches their vision and are recommending MXDE, so that maybe that could help incentivize the future decommissioning and release of the property or surplus of the property.
can you elaborate
not
on
fa-
the legal? I mean,
Right, so right now, as a power plant, that would only be allowed in W3. So if we were to change the zoning as part of this process to an MXD district, for example, it would become a non-conforming use. They would just need to register with the county.
I'm not familiar with that. Sorry.
But there's only the power plants there. Right,
Okay.
it's just about plant building way.
All set?
I know, I think, Ms. Rosberg had a question.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with that site. Does that have, if it's currently owned by the Army, I'm assuming, right?
No, this is owned by, who is the actual owner of Brandon Shores? It's not Constellation, it's Allen. the
It doesn't
Allen
matter. It
It's
doesn't
part of
matter,
the-
but let's just say they leave. They're gonna have to do environmental remediation.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Federal law.
Yeah.
so it
So-
could, if they did. So it could conceivably, if they did enough environmental remediation, be developable as a mixed use versus a W3.
And the idea
Yes.
here, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
yes.
I'll leave it at.
Yeah, okay, we'll talk about it more, I'm sure. Thank you.
Yep,
Okay, so that's the quick, long overview of the plan. I took so much longer than I thought. Plan 2040 and the Region 1 plan and comp zoning. I really hit the highlights. It wasn't meant to be comprehensive, but we'll go through how you can visit these plans as well as the online zoning map later in the presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to Patrick Hughes, the planner for Region 3.
Thank you. Patrick Hughes, Region 3 covers, the Severn and Glen Burnie area, as well as a little bit of the Millersville community. So if I can kind of get you all to focus in on that area, just a little south of where we just were. We held a lot of similar outreach events, and some of the key issues that we heard from the public, and this is not at all an exhaustive list of the things that we heard, but in general, a strong appreciation for the region's proximity to different things, jobs, shopping, parks and trails, and just having access to those things. There's a strong desire on the part of people in the public to address issues with crime, to have more or have improved access to trees, green space and parks, more bicycle pedestrian ways. There were a lot of comments in Region 3 about revitalization, the need kind of revitalizing some of the underutilized commercial areas in particular. Specific areas came up frequently, of course, Marley Station Mall, the Glen Burnie Town Center, And even people talk a lot about underutilized parking areas, big parking areas, the need for facade improvements in some places. And then, of course, traffic congestion and safety, we can say that applies everywhere in the county. The Region 3 vision, this was developed by the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, helps focus the direction of the plan. You'll see the similar key themes related to the environment, housing, transportation, civic engagement, and then just making sure that there are opportunities for everyone to thrive in all of those areas within Region 3. There's a demographic section, existing conditions section that provides an overview of these demographics, economic conditions. And then within this, and this is the same for all three plans, a narrative overview of each community. And this offers some tailored commentary about each community and kind of a tailored vision for each of the communities in the region. And this is important as we review our development projects and make sure that they're consistent with these master plans. It's one of the things that we will be looking to. In this section, there is a note to, or a recommendation to adjust the boundary between regions 1 and 3 in 2 key areas. One is on the left to bring into Region 3 a little piece of Queenstown along Queenstown Road that is just north of Route 100. And then on the right, you'll see there's a piece of the Brandon Woods Business Park that I guess when Plan 2040 was adopted, maybe that hadn't been developed, and for whatever reason, the line was drawn where it was. We're recommending send that piece over to Region 1 just to bring that all into one area. That would take place after the adoption of these region plans, so next round. Like the other plans, we have the 4 main chapters, the natural environment section. This has a total of 8 strategies. In our case, 6 of those are specific to Region 3, 2 that are a little bit broader and would apply countywide, but key highlights: stormwater management, enhancing, aging stormwater facilities, enhancing water quality, reducing flooding, strategies related to tree canopy for both environmental and visual benefit, land conservation, expansion of the green infrastructure network. This is important in the northern part of the county where that network is not always as robust as other parts. And then living shorelines with a focus on areas that are prone to sea level rise. The built environment, it's the largest chapter in all 3 of these plans, I'm sure. This one, we have a total of 22 strategies. 19 are specific to the region, and they focus on things like housing. Housing was a key focus of discussion among the SAC. There's a strong support for expanding opportunities and improving affordability of housing in Region 3, as well as improving the quality of our aging housing stock in some areas. Again, redevelopment and revitalization of areas. This came up a good bit, and we have strategies to address that. Aging commercial areas, and really focusing our development into already developed areas in order to preserve existing natural areas. So it's kind of echoes from Plan 2040 there. We do recommend a master plan for the full Glen Burnie Town Center area, as well as the Severn Village Center and the Arundel Village Center. And then we talk a bit about Marley Station Mall as well. And then, of course, transportation recommendations, kind of prioritizing certain recommendations in all the modes related to transportation. I'll focus a little bit. There's a section on the Queenstown community. We did an awful lot of outreach in this neighborhood, and I just kind of want to draw your attention to it. There's a section that really goes through some of the tough issues that are facing this community. Broadly, this is the area that is just west of the Porterfield Crossing shopping center, where you have Walmart and Lowe's and such. This is a historic African-American community, and a lot of the descendants of the earliest families are still in the area and actively investing in purchasing properties and trying to kind of retain that cohesive feel to the area. It is a low-density residential character predominantly. Although there is one largely kind of underdeveloped industrial area that exists up in this area here. In particular, the land use challenges facing this, it's surrounded by growing areas and there are impacts from the airport just to the north. A lot of this area is within what's called the airport noise zone, where the desired land uses are non-residential, and yet you have a lot of existing homes within that airport noise zone in that area. So these are the things that we tried to kind of unpack, and we had several meetings and did some very targeted outreach in this area to kind of talk through some of these things. What we heard very clearly and in a very unified fashion is that the community really wants to retain its low density residential nature. They're very protective of their community, and they want to preserve the heritage that they're actively working to preserve there. So our land use plan and later our zoning recommendations kind of support this, and we're not really expanding the existing commercial or industrial planned land use or zoning in this neighborhood or within this community. There are some alignment issues that we've resolved, but other than that, we're really trying to kind of preserve that low density residential nature there. So take a look at that section and be aware of that.
Flight path, is that in flight path as well?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, directly over.
Yeah.
that.
Yes,
Mhm.
I hear it on a regular basis.
I know,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, do you live in the
Yeah,
area?
I live here.
Okay. All right. Our holding capacity model is, or the results of it are outlined in this section as well. We ran the holding capacity analysis back in 2023 at the outset of this process. The model was tweaked a bit and rerun just a few months ago, and we actually ended up with this second running with a bit of a deficit in holding capacity within the Region 3 area. So that is, I think that's reflected, and I talk about that a little bit in this section as well. But we do have some areas that I think that we're making up a good bit of this difference in some of the zoning proposals that we have that I'll start to go over. And so I think we can make up a good bit of this deficit as we move forward here. We also include, of course, the policy area and planned land use maps that we've discussed. And these are updated based on conversations with the SAC, input from the public. And I'll walk through that a bit with you through the zoning discussion in just a bit. The last two topical chapters, these are much more brief, and I've kind of combined them in this one slide. The healthy communities chapter, we have 6 strategies in total. All of them are specific to the region. Highlights amenities and safety at recreation facilities, access to natural areas, particularly to Severn Run natural area, which is kind of in the southern part of Severn. Litter cleanup, the healthy economy section. This has 9 additional strategies that are all specific to the region, that a lot of them just really reinforce the work that is being done with our economic development folks. And these strategies focus on tools and resources really to get at helping to revitalize some of our underutilized areas like the Glen Burnie Town Center and Marley Station Hall. So that's the plan itself in a nutshell. I'm really providing more of an overview than getting too deep into it. I'll let you all read through and let me know your questions or points of discussion. So this chart, it summarizes the change in the different zoning categories as we went through our comprehensive zoning draft that we have before you now. I'll go over several key areas of change in the next few slides. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to really walk through each community, but to keep the presentation brief, I'm really only focusing on the key areas, the ones that I really want to draw your attention to, because there were differences of opinion perhaps between staff and the SAC. We got a lot of public input on some, and just others that I just want you to make sure that you all look at and weigh in on. So kind of give you all of that, but please, of course, review all of Region 3 and anything you have questions on, let me know. So I'm gonna start over in the Severn area, starting with the western side of the region. The Severn community, it extends basically from I-97 over to Fort Meade and Ridge Road. And I'm gonna focus on 4 key areas within Severn. There were 17 zoning change applications. And the 4 areas that I'm gonna focus on are those that are listed there. So getting first to the Telegraph Road area. For context, it's really the northern part of the Telegraph Road area. So Reese Road. Here we go. Yeah, so Reese Road is down here. This is the Severn Village Center down in this area. Route 100 is up in this area. So the southern portion that is red down there is the a suburban neighborhood village center as adopted in Plan 2040. So that's intended for targeted development and mixed use kind of at a lower scale than our town centers. We talked about that at the SAC. They recommended retaining that designation for this southern area in red here. But really the area I want to talk to you or draw your attention to in terms of zoning changes is this area up in here. A lot of this was primarily R1 zoning, particularly on the west side of Telegraph Road. We do have some areas of R5 and R10 and even C3, particularly on the east side. We had one zoning request, which is this larger property right here. So our recommendations at this point that I'll draw your attention to, this neighborhood is called Munson Heights. We're recommending that it move from R1 to R2. That matches the built density in that neighborhood as it is today. This is change SBN 0002. That's the zoning change application. The owner here requested R10 zoning on this, which would be similar to what's across the road. OPZ is recommending R5 right now on this site, but the SAC disagreed with us and they recommended R10. And I will point out the web app actually has a mistake on this, but the table that you have before you is correct in terms of what the SAC is recommending.
Can you tell me where that is along 170? Is that below 32 or above?
Above. This is Route 100 here.
Okay.
This is Reese Road, Donaldson down here, Minnetonka. That's right here.
Okay.
Does that orient you?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the owner has weighed in during the preliminary comment period, noting that the R5 that we're recommending, it actually precludes townhomes, and they're concerned that it would make expanding or extending utilities a little bit cost prohibitive there. So like I said, the SAC recommended R10, we're still recommending R5, and we are recommending R5 along the rest of this corridor, just because it's a little bit of an upzoning and to accommodate more housing in an area that's kind of between a major corridor and a village center. So that's one area that I would call your attention to there. Moving to
sorry,
you. Yes,
question,
go ahead.
going back, just because
Okay.
it's hard to see. I see the R10, what's next to on the south side of the R10? What color is that? Yes, right there.
So that's R5. We're recommending a change from R1 to R5 in this area here. Further in, we're recommending, this is a change from R1 to R2 here. And also back here, this is accessible from Minnetonka Road.
Minnetonka is going to be R5.
Yes, this would be R5
okay.
here.
Okay.
So does that give you what you need?
Yeah, no,
Elizabeth?
yeah, sorry. I couldn't expand that much, so thank you.
So the Queenstown area, I talked a little bit about this. The area is primarily, the stuff in yellow here is R2, and then the purple area is a lot of industrial zoning, primarily W1. You see the one darker area, W2. We had one request for W2 zoning right here that we are recommending remain at W1 zoning. We did during the preliminary draft period receive an application immediately next door to this one. A woman who does live in a house, and she actually requested to be downzoned to R2. We did not support that, recommending maintaining the W1 just because it's within a C of this W1 area here. We also had a request for these two properties down here to be upzoned from C2 to W1 in order to do warehousing or self-storage. We're recommending retaining the C2 that exists in this area. It's right at, so for orientation, this is Porterfield Road right here. So it's right at the entrance into the neighborhood here. So we're recommending retain that C2 zoning in that area. And so at this point, the zoning changes that you see in this area are primarily alignment issues, but maintaining the low density residential zoning that's in place in this area. And this is based on what we were hearing from the community as well. So yeah, do take a look at that. But then I'll point out this Stevenson Road area. This is just west of I-97 and right off of Newcott Road here. The new Severn Run High School is right across the road here. We had two requests for upzoning from R2 to R5. That triggered us and the SAC to look at all along this southern side of the road here. And we ultimately ended up recommending all of these to be upzoned to R5. In reality, this is an existing neighborhood here that is built at an R5 density, so not a lot of change on the ground there. This is the Archbishop Spalding school campus here. I don't know that I anticipated they would ever redevelop, but at any rate, it is an opportunity to potentially provide some additional housing in this area as well. There are a few areas that could be redeveloped. Now, the SAC did talk a good bit about potentially extending the R5 zoning up in this area, but they ultimately opted not to do that. And so their recommendation and ours was just this area to the R5. I'm sorry?
What was the reason, did they say?
I have to go back and look at our notes, but there was discussion about, you know, should we also extend R5 further this way? And I think they just ultimately landed on ending it right here. And I don't remember if that had to do with utilities or what exactly. I'd have to get back to you on that. And then the final area that I want to point out in Severn is this area. It's Grover Road. It's a little bit south of where we just were. This is a change from what was put out in the preliminary draft. So the SBN 0123 is this large area of yellow here. Currently, the adopted zoning is a lot of W1 zoning, some OS, and even some R1 zoning, all cutting across that one piece of property. We're recommending rezoning it to R2. It would be a little bit more in keeping with this residential neighborhood up here, as opposed to the potential for industrial development on this side as well. So this is a change from the preliminary draft. The owner is going to receive a letter soliciting their input on that, and we don't have their input just yet on this. So moving on to the Glen Burnie community. This one had the largest number of changes in zoning requests, and the Glen Burnie, as we have it delineated, it really extends from 97 north to 695 and then all the way out Marley Neck to Region 1. So again, I'm just gonna give you the very big picture here and let you dig in and see what questions you have. The Glen Burnie Town Center, I'm gonna focus on it first. I'm gonna back out a little bit and kind of go over the policy area map because we made some recommendations to change the policy area map a bit. We're recommending changing currently the town center development policy area extends north of Georgia Avenue a good bit, kind of into this more auto-oriented area up here. We're recommending pulling that back a little bit to Georgia Avenue so that the town center policy area is limited to south of Georgia Avenue. And then to the north, we're applying the new corridor revitalization and redevelopment overlay policy area. That keeps that area that is all within what's called a commercial revitalization overlay district. That's a zoning overlay. It keeps that area within the targeted growth area and helps maintain some flexibility and development incentives, but also sort of recognizes the difference between the more auto-oriented areas along Ritchie Highway and the more mixed-use town center vision that we're looking for to the south. So that kind of starts us off there in the Glen Burnie Town Center. In terms of zoning and zoning requests, we did get a number of applications in this area. I won't delve into all of them, but the current area, the brown is town center zoning, and then we have a lot of C2, C3, and sometimes even C4 zoning immediately around. The residential neighborhoods are generally R5, those are stable, and we didn't really address a whole lot with regard to the neighborhoods. But I will say, just kind of as a broad principle, we tended to avoid supporting requests for C4 zoning where it is within that town center development policy area, C4 being highway commercial, and we sort of wanted to focus that type of energy more along the Ritchie Highway auto corridor. So, so that's kind of the general principle that we applied as we looked at zoning in this area. I'll also point out the 7409 B&A Boulevard. It's a large county-owned property here that we've applied mixed-use transit zoning in order to facilitate transit-oriented redevelopment. This is very close to the Cromwell light rail station, and so several of these properties here are receiving that mixed-use transit zoning in that area. We did get some comments from the public in this area, confirmations for the 7409 B&A Boulevard recommendation there. We did get one property owner who opposed. We initially, as a consistency change, had recommended a property that looks like a house in this area right adjacent to the town center. We had recommended downzoning it from R10 to R5. He called and noted that he has all 7 units there. So we're changing that recommendation to retain the R10. It seems appropriate given how it's being used and its proximity to the town center. So you'll see that as a difference from what was in the preliminary draft. But overall, we're kind of our recommendations try to maintain compatibility with that designated town center area. So moving on to, I want to point out 2 kind of lesser corridors, the Furnace Branch corridor and then the B&A Boulevard corridor just a little bit to the south. We had several zoning applications on those areas, and a lot of them were asking for C4 zoning there, and kind of applying that same principle. We tended to not support C4 zoning in these areas because of the proximity of the stable residential neighborhoods surrounding it. We tended to favor a little bit lower intensity zoning and hope for more local student neighborhood services in these areas. I say that knowing that there is existing C4 zoning on both of these corridors as well. And I will point out that the SAC disagreed with us in the Furnace Branch corridor there. So they actually supported the C4 requests for rezoning along the Furnace Branch Road corridor. But we maintained our recommendation to maintain the existing zoning there. So that's that area in a nutshell. We didn't get a lot of public comment in this area at all. In fact, most of our public comment was really just phone calls asking for information on the letters that we sent out. So I don't know. I'm hoping we'll get a little bit more of this go round. Marley Station Mall in the Ritchie Highway South area. We have few zoning changes in this area, but a policy area change that we're recommending is placing Marley Station Mall itself in mixed use planned land use and giving it that mixed use policy area overlay to help facilitate opportunities for redevelopment. I do think redevelopment is going to be a very tricky thing to accomplish with Marley Station. There's some tough ownership issues and things, but doing all that we can to sort of set up a policy environment that may help promote redevelopment here, because this is where we would really like to put a lot of those extra housing units that we need in the region. That's it. We did get one comment just asking to maintain the split between OS and C4 zoning here, and we've supported that, and it's shown on your in the draft map as it is now. I'm going to move out to the Marley Neck area. We heard early on about the need for more commercial zoning in this area in order to support the growing residential communities that are out in this area. So we have tried to be responsive to that a good bit. We had a zoning application, GBN 0004, for this mixed use residential. This is the large parcel in the middle of the screen here. We've supported that. It aligns with the planned land use that was adopted with Plan 2040. We also had several other zoning applications requesting commercial zoning, GBN 0003 and 0025. Then also we have a staff recommendation at Fort Smallwood Road 0121. All of those were recommending C3 zoning for those. I will draw your attention to just to continue to point out areas where the SAC maybe had a difference of opinion with us. Take a look at these two applications just south of the large mixed-use residential area here. We're recommending, what are we recommending? Let's see, the SAC had recommended W2 for one of these and did not come to a consensus on the other one. We're maintaining a recommendation of W1 on both of those because we felt like that was a little bit more compatible with the adjacent residential areas. And this is on Solly Road across from Brandon Woods. So do take a look at those, and I'd like to have you all weigh in on those as we go through this. And then just, I'm not going to dwell on this. This is going to be a bit of a change. After the last SAC meeting, I found out that this application, GBN 0402, this is out Nabs Creek Road. That land has been sold, and the new owner is no longer interested in pursuing a zoning change, but he actually wants to maintain the existing zoning on this property. So I'll talk to you all about that, but just know that that's coming. But we don't have a stat. We haven't talked about it internally yet, so I don't have a recommendation yet. Getting into Millersville, so it's only a portion of the area that is within Region 3. We got 7 zoning change applications. We have 3 key staff recommendations. Look at all of them, but I'm going to focus your attention to Elverton Road because that is another area where the SAC disagreed with us on this. We had 4 requests to change from either R1 or R2 to R5, and it's these areas that are highlighted on the screen here. We recommended retaining the existing R1 or R2 zoning on these properties. The SEC actually recommended supporting the R5 requests here. They felt like this is in close proximity to the R2 corridor or Route 2 corridor, which is over in this area. So take a look at that and be ready to kind of give your thoughts on this whole area, I think, the Alberton Road, because we may want to think about it if you want to recommend something just for these four or a larger area. So I'll just draw your attention to that. That's what I had for Region 3, and I will stop and maybe turn it over to Region 9.
Okay, so as we take a drive down to Region 9, I'd like to give a special shout out to Dr. Nikki, who's an SAC member here with us tonight. I know we have a few online as well, so thank you all for your
Region
continued
9
participation.
walks. I'm just saying, I mean, it might be biased.
So, Region 9, think about Edgewater along the coast down to North. That's where we're going to be walking through tonight. As Mark mentioned a minute ago, one really cool aspect of my job that I got to experience is working with, the South River students and seeing what they were able to come up with, their ideas. And I'm happy to report that our future is in good hands with the youth. And we're actually doing the same with Region 8. So I can't wait to report on that again next year. So what we've heard and what lines up with what the students were actually talking about as well is these kind of the big bullet point items we've heard a lot. Environmental protection, big, right? Lack of housing diversity, not only the types of housing, but housing that's affordable and affordable housing. Maintain the character and scale of the communities. Make sure everything is, consistent, compatible, very similar to what we've kind of heard tonight already. Park and recreation facilities, there's always a need for that. It seems there's always the students and the elderly always mention places to gather. What can they do? Go out there. Traffic congestion was a constant. We've heard roadway safety along the same lines. And then obviously we've heard a lot, keep South County moving. That was almost constant every time around the public, at meetings. It was a constant message we continued to hear day in and day out. So here's the vision statement for Region 9. It's in it's in the plan as well. It's lengthy, but it's good. Vision statement covers a lot of different important aspects. Environmental protection, and a lot of these aspects are mentioned in the slide previous. Environmental protection, historical and cultural importances, infrastructure investments, agricultural and maritime industries, tourism, and then also equitable access to housing, jobs, schools, and recreational facilities. The equity component of the Region 9 plan was also a constant reminder in SAC meetings as well as different public interactions we've had. So very similar to what we've heard tonight with regarding the plan. I won't go into too much detail with these, but I would highly encourage you to look at our recommendations and strategies that were created. The two largest chapters in Region 9 is the natural environment and the built environment. And as you can see, what we've recommended for strategies aligns with what we've heard, right? Land conservation, ag preservation, protection of the coastal communities. Being right along the water, sea level rise is an issue, and making sure single family residences, all residences, as well as the future of the coast is protected. Shifting to the built environment, housing that's affordable housing, different types of housing that can really help accommodate a great group of individuals, from kids who are living there now who want to come back and move in, or the elderly who maybe want to downsize, or the day-to-day workers that just need somewhere to live, that can afford to live, is a big key component we've heard regarding the housing crisis. Multimodal safety was another key aspect regarding transportation. Bicyclists was bicyclist, pedestrian, walkability, all big pieces as well. And access to transportation options. There's a South County Colin ride, but it does seem like that was a piece that Region 9 wanted to elaborate more on and really help explore moving forward. The other two chapters are a little lighter. Healthy communities, again, talked a lot about parks, recreation, and senior centers, to really for those community gathering spaces, right? make sure there's something accessible that everyone can go to in a safe environment for to enjoy their day-to-day life. Healthy economy. One big key component was local businesses. There was a big focus on local business aspects and keeping it kind of local down in South County. And then education and engagement on the importance of marine and agricultural trades in the South County area. Just like the other regions, here is the holding capacity. But unlike the other regions, Region 9's pretty good. We have a slow growth forecast over the next couple decades. We are projected to have about 312 compared to the so they had. And given that, and given the current zoning, Region 9 has the capacity to meet the needs of the future growth today. So here are the breakdown of what's changing. I'll point out a couple things. As you can see, what may jump out to you quickly is the OS, open space change, increases by over 1,100 acres. And that's by far the biggest increase or decrease of the whole. One thing I'd like to point out as well is if there is a zoning category that's not on here, it's because it doesn't currently exist and there's no recommendation for it to exist. For example, R22 does not exist in South County or in Region 9, and we're not recommending any R22 in region. And as you can see, the commercial, industrial, maritime zonings have slight increases. Overall, everything is pretty much staying the same as what it is today. Regarding minus the open space and some decreasing in some of the residentials to accommodate for that open space growth. So as we begin to get into more of the community by community conversation, I'm going to start with the Edgewater, we'll go to Mayo, and work our way down to North Beach. Very similar to the other regions, I'm going to basically really just focus in on the areas where the staff recommendation and the SAC recommendations were different. We had a lot of good public responses, and for the most part, they actually, SAC and the staff agreed on a lot, and the public agreed with us as well. So that was really good to see moving forward there. So in Edgewater, there's only one application where OPC and staff had a different recommendation. And this, I wouldn't even necessarily call a differing opinion. It's just the SAC at that time didn't have all the information. This was an application. This is the funeral home along Route 2 in Edgewater, close to the bridge. It's currently split R1 and C3. The applicant wants to maintain a split, but they just want to increase their commercial by a little bit. And if you can see where that white line is on the map, on the snippet, that the commercial would extend to that white line. The SAC did not come up with a recommendation on this at the time, only because the applicant was still working to figure out where they wanted that split to occur. The applicant came back to staff after the SAC had met, so the SAC did not have the opportunity to review the recommendation, what the applicant was finally requesting. And there was no public comment on this site during the preliminary review. Here's Mayo community. This is the largest community with applications, and as you can see, it's only 13. It's it's much more a smaller number of applications in Region 9 than other regions to date. There were two areas that the SAC and staff had differing opinions on. And the first is right off Lock Haven Road. It's currently mostly zoned R1 with a little tiny sliver of, or a little tiny section of open space in that upper circle area. Staff's recommendation is for to maintain all R1, make the whole property R1. While the SAC initially reviewed this site, agreed with staff as R1, but then at the next meeting, the SAC wanted to revisit this, had a further discussion, and they initially they were discussing to downzone this entirely to open space. Their big conversation driver was the fact that they didn't want to see this area really developed by at all. But they knew there were, great limitations to open space rather than R1 or even RLD. And they eventually decided to recommend RLD. So it still provide a little bit of development potential, but not quite to where they are today. Is there a question?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you how many acres that was?
I would have to, I'll get back to you.
Yeah, no, I believe I got, yeah,
Thank
thank you very much.
you. No problem.
That are all failing.
So moving on to the next section, the next Mayo application where there was a differing view is 712 Central Avenue. This is an area that the owner requested W2, but with further conversation, we had with the applicant, they would also, it's my understanding, be okay with commercial designation. This is an area where staff believes the change to C1 is consistent with the area and the owner's intent to expand the commercial business and is compatible with the surrounding area. The SAC discussed the zoning of the area and really had concerns with traffic and access to the property. However, they did discuss, the small business aspect and keeping it local, but ultimately the SAC could not reach a recommendation one way or the other on this site.
Jessica Levy here for the last application discussed, CZR9 MYO-0001. The acreage is just shy of 45 acres.
Can we go back to that for just a second? I have a question about that one. So it's currently split R1 and O and open space, right?
That's
But
correct.
can you show us the split? It looks like all I see is green. How much of that is open space and how much of that is R1?
It's
Mark can jump in.
It's this is the area that's currently open space of the property. All this in the circles are R1. So what staff is recommending is maintain all this R1 and again, clean up that little triangle of open space R1.
What is that road that divides those two parts?
Whenever I go, this is my first, and whenever we do the demo, I'll focus on. We can take a little closer look at it. There's some questions.
Water and sewer, planned water and sewer.
I don't think we have planned water and sewer in the web map. If that's some kind of, when you're the address, we can show you how to get that.
I believe it is in the plans, sewer service cap.
In the master plan.
Yes.
I'm sorry, it's planned in the master plan?
Yes. Planned sewer, it is in the planned sewer service cap.
But no water and sewer currently.
That's mine. I'll have to confirm.
And is
And
that
can-
in that special system that Mayo has
Correct.
that would have to tie into that's all tanks are failing?
At a replacement cost of 40,000 each.
Mhm.
Yeah. Can we really downzone it to RLD? Something to think about.
I'm concerns about downzoning that being inconsistent with the sewer service area.
Would you be able to tell me what the neighborhood above it is in yellow? Is that R2?
That looks like it's R2.
Okay, so what are the ones below it, since they're not shaded?
It's all R,
So all of that is R1 already,
correct.
okay. That's all.
I believe that's also in the Greenway. The Greenway mark.
Moving on.
It is.
Yeah, all right, sorry. So any questions on Mayo 4? Okay. So moving on to Galesville, so there was one area in Galesville that staff and SAC had differing opinions on as well. And this one was an application that actually came in during the preliminary review. It's off Benning Road. It's in the industrial area of Galesville. it's currently split zone R2 and W2. The W2 is the purple and the R2 is the yellow color. Staff recommended to maintain the current split, while the SAC came to a recommendation of making the entire parcel W2. The SAC noted that this site's been maritime or marine industry for a very long time. Rezoning the W2 would allow full use of the site, and that is supported by Plan 2040 policy 4.2. However, staff view the maintaining the existing split is consistent with the adopted plan land use and is also compatible with the surrounding area. Staff also notes that the surrounding area of the currently zoned R2 portion is surrounded by single family homes as well as other R2 zoning. So W2 could essentially provide more industrial type uses closer to these homes.
Has any residents commented on that?
Not at this time, but this came in during the preliminary review, so they haven't had opportunity.
Does this, sorry, can you go back for a second? Just thinking that I think we went through exactly the same thing in the previous regions. And we were looking at MA 1, 2, 3 versus W2. I don't know if that's something to consider. But we may want to look at what we did in the other region to make it consistent for this region.
So moving on to West River, there was four applications submitted for a zoning change. One area where the SAC and staff deferred. So this application is for 4921 and 4957 Money Creek Road. It's currently split RLD with some open space. The owner requested actually RA. Staff recommended maintaining the RLD, making it all RLD. And the SAC did not come up with a recommendation. There was generally the SAC was split between RLD and RA. One big factor that came in for staff's analysis is we think the recommendation could have changed to all RA if the neighbors in between were willing. We haven't heard anything from those neighbors at this time. So given the fact that it's two kind of separated areas, it would be more consistent with that portion of the community to maintain the RLD zone. So moving on to Shady Side, there were two areas that had differing views from the SAC and staff. The first one is along Snug Harbor Road, just south of the Discovery Village area. This is an area where they applied for R10. It's currently zoned C1. Staff initially recommended maintaining the C1, but during the preliminary review, staff examined this area and took a closer look. And we saw that this was in the limited development area, the LDA critical area. So the density is limited to about 4 units, or it is limited to 4 units an acre. And given the conversation around housing options and being able to diversify housing needs or help with the housing needs, this is an area where staff actually changed the opinion to make it R5. So kind of somewhere in the middle between what it is and R10. When we brought this back up to the SAC the second time, they still maintain the recommendation of C1.
Is that, I think ours still says R1. Am I on the right thing?
No. No.
Snug Harbor Road. Oh, this one. Gotcha. Thank you.
I think all the future in the mixed use since it's already commercial and they're looking for.
So that was, I think, part of the conversation. I think the site is just too small for mixed use development.
Oh, okay. What's the acreage?
I would have to,
1.7.
yeah, and So speaking of Discovery Village, this is another area, just north of the site we just looked at. This is an application that came in during the preliminary review, so comments are limited. The owner requested MC. It's currently zoned W1. Staff recommends MB, so it's not quite as intense as MC. But the SAC was discussing at the last meeting, what they view the site as. Is it more industrial? Is it more maritime? Staff, with our recommendation, believes the site should be more of a maritime use than industrial. However, the SAC could not come up with a recommendation. They were pretty split. The limited comments we have heard, though, so far have been in opposition to any type of change of the site.
So they want to stick with the what, W1.
That's what we've heard so far. But again, the responses have been very limited. Moving on to Churchton, there was one area where the SAC and staff had differing views. This is right next to Christopher's, if you guys are familiar with that, right across from the Royal Farms gas station. It's where Muddy Creek and Shadyside Road meets and merge into one another. So this is where the applicant came in and wanted the whole L-shaped property to be zoned C3. The adopted zoning is R1 and just a little bit of C3 along the edge, not too much. But staff is actually recommending making the front portion along Shadyside Road up to that white line C3 and then maintaining the back half as R1. And one of the reasons behind that is it keeps in line with the neighbor Christopher's, as well as keeping the ability to maintain that residential backing that matches the rest of that community to the east. The SAC could not reach a recommendation on this, but did discuss concerns about drainage and water runoff of the site and nearby areas. There was also mentioning of other underutilized and vacant commercially zoned sites in the area. There's also mentioning of traffic concerns, or I guess there have been traffic fatalities in the area that was helping drive that conversation as well. But again, the SAC could not reach a consensus on this. And most of the comments we've heard so far oppose any type of change to the site. I'm moving on to Deal. So from here on out, Deal, Tracy's Landing, and North Beach, I have a slide for each. I'll go through each. But these remaining areas, the SAC and staff were in agreement from start to finish with all the applications moving on. But just to kind of quickly run through these, the majority of the comments in Deal, were more on the consistency changes recommended for individual properties and pertain to the property owner asking questions about the recommendation. We heard a lot from, I got a letter, like Patrick mentioned, we got a letter, what's it mean, what's changing the property? And then we walked them through the process, and if they had a consistency change, we told them about that, from the OS to the parcel line adjustments. Those were the majority of the conversations we had in these remaining communities. And then Tracy's Landing, very similarly, same kind of concept, a lot of conversations, just education to each property owner and resident of the area. And then finally, North Beach, the same thing, right? So, and that's it for Region 9. I'm going to pass it over to Mark Burke, who's going to walk us through the web viewer. If there's no more questions, if there's not any questions for Region 9. Thank you.
It's Mark Burke from the Office of Planning and Zoning. If you cannot hear me online, please let me know and I'll move up to the main table. Mark, can you bring the slide for me? Yeah. You want me to do that? Or, actually, it's a little bit easier. Mark it.
Stay here.
Custom. Appreciate it.
We're just swapping out one mark for another.
On talking on his own.
All right, so good evening. Again, I'm Mark Burke, from the Office of Planning and Zoning. Here tonight, give you a little demo of the comprehensive zoning web viewer. Before we get into the web viewer, I would like to just give you a little primer on our wonderful zoning change numbers. So you'll see in the first part, the CZ, that's for comprehensive zoning. The second two digits there are represent the region. So you'll see R1, R3, or R9. The three digit code next is for the communities. We've broken all our communities into those 3 digits. And then the 4-digit number at the end is the change number. And you can see there in the sequence of our change numbers, anything that goes from 1 to 99 is going to be an owner application. Anything from 100 to 199 is going to be a staff recommended change. 200 to 299, if there was a zoning change in application that came in and we saw something was close to it that, you know, fit the bill and we could change the zoning also, became a recommended companion change. The 300 series is reserved for SAC recommendations. Owner applications during preliminary draft, 400. Owner applications during PAB, 500 series. Any county council amendments when we get there will be in the 600 range. And then county council member initiated zoning amendments will be in that 700 range. And our consistency changes go from 1001 to until we run out of promise. Yeah. So I would like to get into the which machine is this running on? It's running on the TV. Okay. I would like to get into how to get to the region plan of 1, 3, and 9 web maps. So I am going to take a step out of the web of the slide and go to our website.
These are good so far. You got Anne Arundel County.
Okay. All right, so we all know how to get to our website. I'm gonna go to no, you're okay. I'm gonna go to the
Just for review, put a landing page right.
oh, right on.
So
Okay, thank you. I did not know that we put that on there. So we have it on the planning and zoning website. There's a new draft review, and we'll go to the hub sites. Y'all are pretty familiar with the hub sites now. So we'll go to region 1. And we'll look at the information here. There is some new information on the region 1 hub site. So the draft plan, all the recommendations, land use plan, and then we'll get down here to the comprehensive zoning draft.
oh, you click just below.
Good, I clicked below it. I did. There you go, web viewer. Again, our web viewer opens up with a splash page, just giving you some information, laying out what how our zoning changes look, what the numbers are, and it also has our GIS disclaimer. And click OK and move away from that. The web app will open with the About pane open on the right side. It will give you some information on how to use the app. There is a guide that you can click on for the description of the zones in Arundel County.
And please note there too, at the top, there's the link to the comment form. So as the public reviews this, if you want to look at this map and put a comment and say, I agree or disagree with this zoning application, or make any other comment on the region plan, you click on that comment form and that will get sent to us.
So this is where it says feedback, map, comments. That's where I'm at.
No, we're if you go to the hub site, and it's the 3rd link or 4th link down on the hub site.
Okay, gotcha.
With the news information at the very top of the website, it's going to get easy for people to get to.
So go back to the map here. And you can close this pane or move it back up to the toolbar or using the X. You'll see some other tools up here on the top right. You have your legend, which is all the active layers in the map right now. You have a layer list, which you can go in and turn on and off, all kind of different layers. And we do have the sewer service areas, priority funding areas, critical areas, all this. To activate anything in the map, just go ahead and click the empty box. The blue check mark will appear. To deactivate, just click the blue box again. There's a base map selector where you can select all the wonderful base maps that Esri has for us, and including aerial imagery, which would be this imagery or hybrid imagery. Hybrid imagery has the roadways in it. And then there's a measure tool where you can measure area, distance, or the shape of a polygon. Now, this is where the tool really is useful, especially for PAB members doing the review. Here we can enter in either an address or one of the zoning change numbers. So throughout the discussion tonight, I heard a couple different zoning change numbers, and just like to show you how to get to them in the information that we provide in the what we call the pop-ups that pop up from there. So the first one we'll go to is up in Hanover. And that would be CZ R1 HAN. And you can see it starts to auto-populate as we go along. So even if you don't know the complete number, that'll give you a list and you can scroll through the list. So we'll continue on here, HAN 1060. You can see it gives you the choice there, and you can click the spyglass or search button to zoom right in on that. The map will take you right to that comprehensive zoning change, and a pop-up will appear giving you the information, the change number, the change type, current zoning, the OPZ recommended zoning, OPZ's justification, the parcel size in acres, change area size in acres, the percent of the parcel area change. So for some of our consistency changes, we might not have 100% of that parcel being changed. It might be a percentage of it. So we do provide that change, and the planned land use, what that is in relation. You can also click in the map anywhere and have a pop-up come up. It will identify the topmost layer visible. So in this, the parcel layer is the topmost visible layer. In that we provide the tax account number, property owner, property address, and acreage. Now the acreage is from our parcel layer. It may be different. It's just on how that is being calculated in our parcel layer.
Yeah. One of two to toggle.
Yep. Wait, that's where I was going next. Thanks for that. Right on. If you do see a one of however many numbers, there might be 2 or 3 layers underneath that are active. You'll see this right caret, and you just click on that right caret, and it'll take you to that next entry. Now, another one of the changes that I did here was
Go back for 1 second. So like, let's just say if we were looking at that particular property and we wanted to see if there were sewer service areas.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, so if we wanted to see if there was a sewer service area, we would go to the layer list, which looks like 3 pieces of paper stacked on top of each other. We would scroll down through the layer list, and we would click the empty box beside sewer service area. Now, we might not see the sewer service area active because they are larger geographies.
Right.
But if we do click in the map anywhere on that parcel that we're looking for, now we see a 1 of 3 active identified.
All right.
So we'll cycle over to that third one.
Okay.
And there we go, our sewer service area.
Okay.
And it'll give you all the information. We're actually giving a little too much there. We don't really need to know who created it.
Right. I had checked the box and I just didn't know how to scroll over to figure it out. Thank you.
You're welcome. Of course, we had another one there. So we have the parcel activity too. We also include the plan land use changes and development policy area change areas in this map. If you want to see if there is a plan land use change associated with that, with the zoning change.
Okay,
And then we're in region one, so we can turn those on, let you see what that looks like, plan land use. And we'll see we'll see some purple activate over here. So let's click over here and see what's going on. Okay, so we're identifying the parcel on top there. Next is the sewer service area. And then next is that plan land use change. And you can see the plan land use number, same kind of format that our other
Right.
change numbers are in the information, justifications and whatnot.
okay.
So that's the major functionality of this application. It's, I think the search tool will be the best option, for PAB members in reviewing this. It's going to be the quickest. If you are in, the table and you want to copy the zoning change number, you can copy and paste it right into that toolbar and it'll search for you. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Michael and Jesse can provide my contact information.
Thank you.
And actually, Mark, while you're doing the demonstration, you can go back to the Region Hub site, there's a list of links.
Yeah.
Point out that for the public and giving comments, those last two links on the bottom, give you the link to provide written testimony. That will take you to an online form that you can walk through to be able to provide comment. And again, it's the same form that's linked to from that web viewer too, so you can get it from either way off those two screens. And the bottom one is to register to provide actually oral testimony at the October meeting.
Right.
And
Okay.
So I am gonna pop back over to the web view because I do want to just touch on the Mayo change, the first change of Mayo, just so you guys can see what it looks like. So we can see what the split is. There were some questions about roads around it and whatnot. So that was CZ. Yeah. R9. Okay, so here is that zoning change that we were looking at. It's the current zoning is a split. The request was for R2, we're recommending R1 and the justification. So if we close on that pop-up, and we can see where the split's gonna be right along. Is that the right one? Eric?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what it's showing is the recommended zoning, which does not have split.
Could you turn the,
Yep. Yeah, most definitely. So we gotta go, center roll, we'll scroll in and out of the map if you're not careful. So we're in region 9 and we want to take this change areas off just so we can see what it looks like underneath. Scoot this back over. And right here, you'll see region 9 draft zoning changes. It's cycle it off. You can see that little split right there. And we can, I zoomed in a little, sorry about that, easier to see. If we turn it back on, we can see that, it goes back to the parcel line. Yeah, you guys can easily cycle it on and off and see what's going on. If you want to see the roads underneath, you can scroll, I think, all the way down and the adopted zoning. If you just want to see the changes and where they are, you can turn the adopted zoning off. And let's turn the region 9 draft zoning changes back on. So we can see where the zoning changes are. So if we zoom out, we only see the colored in areas of the map.
I find that view to be very useful as you're trying to scroll through and see, okay, what is actually changing? You turn off the base zoning, then you only see the changes.
Any other questions, comments, concerns this evening? Thank you for this. You're welcome. I will let the staff know to tilt it.
Yeah, let them know.
Yeah, you did an
Very
awesome
helpful.
job.
Yeah.
Very thorough.
I just want to give one warning that there's a lot of data in there and a lot of layers. So if you don't have the best internet, it is a little slow. But just be patient with it. It usually is fine.
I realized that today.
And one tip, it may automatically do this, but if, I'm looking at region 9, I'd double check, make sure 1 and 3 are unchecked.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Very thank you.
That will
Less
also
data.
help with performance, yeah, the less it has to draw, the faster, yeah. This app is also mobile responsive, so you can view it on your phone.
Awesome.
Very good. Is there any more questions from the PAV? Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone from OPZ. At this time, we'll open the record now for testimony. If there's anybody online, anybody here that wants to, members can provide their comments orally and in writing. Yep. The written testimony for the Region 9 will be accepted up until October 9th. Region 1, October 16th, and Region 3, October 23rd. Written comments can be submitted via the survey link on the screen that as we just showed you how to do that. Oral testimony will be heard at the public hearing dates, and everyone is encouraged to provide testimony at the date scheduled for their region. You can attend any of the meetings that you want, even if you're not in that region. Please contact staff if you need to attend a public hearing for a different region and you need some help. Region 9, that meeting will be September 25th at 6 p.m. at Southern High School. Region 1 is October 2nd at 6 p.m. at the Maritime Institute for Technology. And Region 3 is October 9th at 6 p.m. at the Hine Building in Glen Burnie. Any questions, comments? We have some administrative stuff to do.
Yes. So like you read, September 25th will be at Southern High School. That starts at 6 p.m. our usual meeting time. Park anywhere you'd like, coming through the main doors. We're gonna be in the auditorium, which is just to the right of that security vestibule, or like when you get into the school. The next week after that will be October 2nd. We'll be meeting at the Maritime Institute of Technology and Graduate Studies, also known as MyTags, in their auditorium. Let me get real quick to the right page because I want to tell y'all where to park and where to go. So 1 second.
I think this is attached to the.
It will be attached to the public notice so that everybody can know.
Put it back. Yeah, it's like.
So for that MyTags location, that is in Linthicum, and we will be meeting in. Here we go. Building 3, there are signs up along the campus to get you to Building 3 where that auditorium is. The closest parking lot is parking lot A. Like Mike mentioned, there is a reference map attached to the public notice and the agenda. So if any folks from the public are coming to attend or to give testimony, they can follow that reference map. The auditorium is indicated by, I believe, a red star. And then on October 9th, we'll be at the Hine Building in Glen Burnie. There is a public parking garage attached to that address that is on the public notice and agenda and on y'all's calendar invite. So you can park in the parking garage and then come down to ground floor level. The building entrance is on the B&A Boulevard side.
And we do ask those who want to speak at those public hearings to register ahead of time. Again, as we showed you, there is a link on the websites for regions 1, 3, and 9 to sign up for that.
Same thing, 2 minutes
Mhm.
Yeah.
for a speaker and for an HOA.
I think everybody gets 2 this time,
2,
because of our,
Changing bylaws.
yes.
okay.
I'm sorry, everybody gets 2 regardless?
Yes,
correct.
We updated the rules and procedures of the planning advisory board or the bylaws, I think early this year. And that was
Right,
one of our
right.
changes.
Okay. And then, for public testimony, I mean, is there, you know, the day before is the cutoff to submit written testimony, or what is the cutoff?
The chair just read off those dates. They're staggered dates for the different regions because we're having public hearings at staggered dates. We're kind of building off of those.
Right, right,
But just as a reminder, for Region 9, the cutoff for the written testimony will be October 9th. And that'll be 11:59 p.m. for each of these. So October 9th
Okay.
for Region 9.
so it's
October
one,
6th,
right, okay, got it.
October 16 for Region 1, and October 23 for Region 3.
Okay, so
And
they can submit testimony up until 11:59 of that day.
yes, for the written testimony that can be submitted through the website on
Right.
that form.
Okay, thank you.
On the registration for providing oral testimony, there's also like a cutoff on that pre-registration. I have that set to 5 p.m. the day before testimony.
Okay.
But I know the chair likes to open it up to anybody in attendance, so if folks
Right.
are filling out the room and they're there, they can still do that. I just like to get early registration to kind of judge how many folks we think are coming. And maybe group people by topic so that we can hear everybody who's going to talk about 123 Main Street at the same time. That way we don't get confused hearing about different places in between.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
One thing I just to make the board aware of is that we have sent out letters to all property owners within regions 1, 3, and 9 to make sure they are aware that the planning advisory board draft is available for public review and that they have opportunity to provide comment to the planning advisory board. So those letters have now been sent out. So we're hoping that will drive a lot of response and comments through this process. All property owners are aware.
Okay, one of the things I would like to ask the board is if you get a call or email or something from one of the property owners and they have questions or concerns, please let everybody on the board know so we can educate and inform the total board and everybody as to what concerns are, or what the questions are, so we can be more informed when we do discuss it.
We'll need to be careful about that, about communications as an entire group. So I recommend that you share that directly with us, then we can distribute it out, or we can discuss it at the meeting in public.
Okay. Well, with that, are we ready to go? Thank you, everyone.
We adjourn.
From OPZ. Very good presentation. There's been a motion.
Thank you.
There's been a motion made to adjourn. Second, okay, all in favor? Okay, meeting's adjourned.